The Korean Mafia boss accidentally runs into his 8 months heavily pregnant ex-wife working in a bakery. The morning sun barely touched the windows of Sweet Blossom Bakery when Ji-hun Park walked in. Not just any man, the Ji-hun Park. Seoul's most feared mafia boss. The man who controlled everything from Gangnam's luxury high-rises to the shadowy gambling dens of Itaewon. He wasn't supposed to be there. This wasn't his usual territory. But fate has a cruel way of orchestrating the most devastating reunions when we're at our most vulnerable. Ha-eun had her back turned, arranging the morning's fresh hotteok in the display case, the sweet cinnamon scent filling the air around her. Her apron stretched tight across her 8-month belly, the child within restless this morning, as if sensing the impending collision of worlds. When the bell above the door chimed, she didn't immediately turn. Just called out the usual greeting, "Welcome to Sweet Blossom." But then the bakery went silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that falls when a predator enters a room. The kind of silence that makes the air itself feel dangerous to breathe. She turned, and their eyes met across the counter. Time collapsed between them. 8 months of separation evaporated in a single heartbeat. His gray eyes widened, first in recognition, then in shock as his gaze dropped to her swollen belly. He stood there in his tailored black suit that probably cost more than she made in 3 months. Power and danger radiating from him like heat. Ha-eun. Just her name. Just 2 syllables from his lips, but they hit her like a physical blow. The tray of pastries slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor in a symphony of destruction. Sweet red bean paste splattered across the pristine tiles like blood. The sound echoed through the bakery like a gunshot. 8 months of careful hiding destroyed in an instant. "You shouldn't be here." Her voice barely a whisper, her hands instinctively moving to shield her belly, as if she could somehow hide the evidence of what they had created together. As if she could protect this child from the complicated, dangerous world of its father. His eyes never left her stomach. That child. Please leave. She was already backing away, looking for escape. For the first time in months, her grandmother wasn't in the bakery. No one to witness this collision of past and present. No one to help her escape. He moved faster than anyone could track. One moment behind the counter, the next his hand shooting out to steady her as she stumbled. His fingers circled her wrist, not painfully, but with enough pressure to make it clear. She wasn't going anywhere. Not this time. His touch burned against her skin, familiar yet foreign after so many months. The entire bakery fell silent. His men by the door. She hadn't even noticed them enter, standing like sentinels. The morning customers frozen mid-bite. Everyone knew who he was. Everyone understood the danger crackling in the air between them. In Seoul's underworld, the Park family name was whispered with fear and respect. And Ji-hun was their crown prince, more terrifying than even his father. If you're feeling the tension in this moment, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and if you've ever had an unexpected reunion that changed your life. This story is just getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Now, I need you to pause for a second, because this isn't just another chance encounter story. This isn't some romantic comedy where ex-lovers bump into each other and laugh about old times. This is about deadly family traditions that go back generations, blood oaths that bind tighter than love. This is about heartbreaking deception that shattered 2 lives and nearly destroyed everything they had built. This is about a woman weeks away from giving birth, hiding from Seoul's most dangerous man, not because she fears him, but because she was made to believe he never wanted her or their child, that she was disposable, replaceable, a mistake he needed to erase. Make sure you're subscribed because what happens next will shatter everything you thought you knew about love and loyalty in Seoul's dangerous underworld. And trust me, with her this close to delivery, the complications that follow could cost them everything. Life and death hang in the balance of this reunion. Let me take you back to where it all began, to help you understand the weight of this moment. The history that makes this chance meeting so explosive. Ha-eun Song wasn't born into Seoul's glittering upper class. She was the granddaughter of a woman who had survived the Korean War by selling sweet bread on the streets. That grandmother, Min-ji, had built Sweet Blossom Bakery from nothing, with bloody fingers and a back bent from labor. She'd raised Ha-eun after her parents died in a ferry accident, when she was just 7 years old. The memory of standing at the harbor, waiting for parents who would never return, had shaped Ha-eun into someone who expected abandonment, who believed deep down that everyone she loved would eventually leave. The bakery became Ha-eun's whole world, her sanctuary from loss. She learned to coax dough into submission before she learned algebra, could tell when honey had crystallized by smell alone. By 25, she had modernized her grandmother's recipes just enough to make them fashionable again. Sweet Blossom became known for their perfect balance of traditional flavors with contemporary presentation. In her hands, centuries-old Korean desserts found new life. Food bloggers and Instagram influencers began featuring their hotteok and yagwa. The tiny bakery began attracting customers from across Seoul. What Ha-eun didn't know was that the quiet street where they'd operated for 40 years had recently become part of Ji-hun Park's territory. The protection money her grandmother paid monthly went directly to his organization, though they never saw the man himself. His collectors were polite, almost respectful of the old woman and her talented granddaughter. After all, even criminals need somewhere to satisfy their sweet tooth. And Sweet Blossom's reputation for the best hotteok in Seoul had reached even the shadowy corners of the criminal underworld. Ji-hun, meanwhile, lived in a penthouse 47 floors above the city. From his windows, Seoul spread beneath him like a glittering offering. His family had risen from the ashes of the Korean War too, but through blood rather than flour. 3 generations of carefully cultivated violence and strategic alliances had placed the Park family at the top of Seoul's criminal hierarchy. His grandfather had started with a single gambling den in Itaewon. His father had expanded to protection rackets and nightclubs. Ji-hun had brought them into the digital age. Money laundering through cryptocurrency, blackmail facilitated by state-of-the-art surveillance. At 32, Ji-hun had already proven himself more ruthless and more intelligent than his father. His enemies disappeared without trace. His allies prospered under his protection. He moved through the city like a shadow with teeth, rarely seen but always felt. Those who crossed him did not get second chances. Those who served him loyally were rewarded beyond measure. But for all his power, all his wealth, all his feared reputation, Ji-hun was profoundly alone. His world was filled with people who either feared him or wanted something from him. Never someone who simply wanted him. His education at elite international schools had separated him from traditional Korean society. His family business separated him from legitimate social circles. He existed between worlds, belonging fully to neither. These two worlds, hers of flower and early mornings, his of luxury cars and blood oaths, should never have collided. But they did, on a rain-soaked evening when Ji-hun's lieutenant hired Sweet Blossom to cater a business meeting. A meeting where territories would be divided, where men would pledge allegiance or declare war. The kind of meeting where decisions made would ripple through Seoul's underworld for years. Ha-eun arrived with boxes of carefully crafted yagwa and hotteok. Traditional sweets presented with modern elegance, arranged on platters that transformed simple street food into art. She wasn't supposed to stay, just deliver, set up, leave. But then Ji-hun tasted her signature honey bread, still warm from the oven. Sweet and savory with a hint of cinnamon that reminded him of childhood visits to his grandmother's home, before the family business consumed his life. "Who made this?" he asked his lieutenant, interrupting a tense negotiation with a rival family. The question traveled across the room until it found Ha-eun, already gathering her things to leave. Their eyes met for the first time across the smoke-filled room, and something inevitable clicked into place. She should have been intimidated by him, by the deference shown by hardened criminals, by the aura of controlled violence that surrounded him. Instead, she saw something familiar in his eyes: loneliness, the same isolation she felt even in a crowded bakery. Here's what nobody tells you about falling in love with someone dangerous. It starts just like any other love story. There are nervous smiles. There are tentative text messages. There are butterflies that feel exactly the same whether the person causing them saves lives or takes them. Love doesn't discriminate between the saints and the sinners. It takes root wherever it finds fertile ground. He showed up at the bakery the next morning before opening hours, requesting a private tasting session. She knew who he was, everyone in that neighborhood knew. The whispers about the Park family traveled faster than gossip about K-pop stars. She should have been terrified. Should have kept the door locked. Should have called the police. Though what good would that do when half the department was on his payroll? Instead, she found herself unlocking the door, letting danger walk right into her life. "Teach me," he said simply, gesturing to the kitchen. No one had ever asked to learn from her before. They wanted her creations, her talent, but never the knowledge behind it. That morning, she showed him how to fold dough for the perfect hotteok. His hands, capable of violence she could only imagine, proved surprisingly gentle with the delicate pastry. Their courtship was a secret, hidden from his family who expected him to marry the daughter of a rival crime boss to secure an alliance that had been planned since both children were in diapers. Hidden from her grandmother who would never approve of a man whose hands were stained with invisible blood, who would fear, rightly, that Haun was walking into a world she couldn't possibly understand. They met in night markets where they could be anonymous among the crowds. He would arrive in nondescript cars, leaving his usual entourage behind. For those precious hours, he wasn't Ji-hun Park, heir to Seoul's most feared crime family. He was just a man in love with a woman who didn't look at him with fear. She showed him how to eat bindiotik with your fingers without dripping, laughing when sauce inevitably ran down his wrist. He taught her which street vendors were secretly fronts for money laundering operations, which ones to avoid, which ones had the best food. "How can you tell?" she asked, as they passed a seemingly innocent fish cake stand. "The money never adds up," he explained. "Too many customers who don't eat. Too much cash for too little product." She should have been appalled, should have walked away from this glimpse into his world. Instead, she found herself fascinated by the invisible city that existed alongside the Seoul she thought she knew. 3 months of stolen moments. 3 months of him learning the language of dough and butter, of fermentation and proofing. 3 months of her learning not to ask about the calls that would pull him away in the middle of dinner, about the bruises sometimes visible on his knuckles. 3 months of falling in love with the man beneath the monster everyone else saw. 3 months before he whispered against her hair, "Marry me." Not a question, not quite a command. Something in between, as complicated as the man himself. "Your family," she started. "Don't matter," he cut her off. "Not for this. Not for us. My grandmother will understand when she sees how much I love you." If you're invested in their love story, smash that like button right now. Comment below if you believe love can truly overcome family expectations. Are you watching from Korea? America? Let me know in the comments where this story is reaching you. They wed in secret, with only his most trusted lieutenant and her childhood friend as witnesses. No white dress. No family celebrations. Just vows exchanged in a small temple outside the city, followed by a night in a traditional hanok with paper walls and a view of mountains that had witnessed centuries of similar secrets. He gifted her a jade necklace that had belonged to his grandmother, the only woman in his family he had truly loved. "This is real," he promised her that night, as rain drummed against the ancient roof. "What we have is real." For 8 months they lived in carefully orchestrated shadows. She kept working at the bakery, never telling her grandmother the truth about the man she now called husband. He kept her existence hidden from his family, protecting her from their world, from their judgment, from their potential retribution. They met in a small apartment he bought in a quiet neighborhood, playing house like normal people while the city slept. In those walls, they could pretend they were just a normal couple, just a man and a woman building a life together. 8 months of happiness before everything collapsed. It started with whispers. His cousin, Sung-min, had always resented Ji-hun's position as heir to the family business, had always looked for ways to undermine him, always thought himself more deserving of the power, the respect, the fear that came with the Park name. When Sung-min somehow discovered Ji-hun's secret marriage, perhaps through bribing the building manager, perhaps through following Ji-hun on one of his visits to the bakery, he saw an opportunity, a weakness to exploit, a way to finally take what he believed should have been his all along. He approached Haun one morning at the bakery, introducing himself with a smile that never reached his eyes, the kind of smile that should have warned her. "My cousin has sent me to deliver a message." She hadn't known Jihan had family visiting from Busan. Didn't question why he wouldn't come himself or at least call. The photos Sungmin showed her seemed real enough. Jihan at a restaurant with a beautiful woman. Their hands touching across the table. Their faces close, intimate. The woman was everything Haun was not. From an influential family, dressed in designer clothes, perfectly poised and elegant. The kind of woman who would make a suitable wife for someone of Jihan's position. The engagement is being announced next week, Sungmin said, his voice dripping false sympathy. He wanted you to hear it from family rather than see it in the business papers. The Kong alliance is too important for distractions. The word cut deeper than any knife. Distraction. Is that all she had been? A temporary amusement before returning to the path his family had laid out for him? Haun would have questioned it, would have called Jihan immediately, but Sungmin's next words froze the blood in her veins. My uncle is a traditional man. If he discovered Jihan had married someone like you, someone with no family connections, no status, it wouldn't just end badly for you. My uncle has destroyed entire families for less. Your grandmother's bakery wouldn't survive the week. This neighborhood would suddenly become very dangerous for elderly women who ask too many questions. The threat was clear, crystal clear. Then he placed the divorce papers on the counter. Jihan's signature already on them, the ink still looking fresh. She stared at that signature, the same signature she had watched him place on their marriage certificate 8 months ago. The same sharp strokes, the same distinctive flourish at the end. He's trying to protect you, Sungmin said. This is the cleanest way. Sign, disappear from his life and everyone stays safe. He gets his suitable marriage, you keep your little bakery, everyone wins. With shaking hands, believing she was protecting both Jihan and her grandmother, Haun signed. The pen felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Each stroke was agony. She was signing away her heart, her future, the man she loved. But what choice did she have? Her grandmother was all the family she had left in the world. And Jihan? If he truly wanted this other woman, this alliance, who was she to stand in the way? 2 weeks later, she discovered she was pregnant. The timing couldn't have been crueler. By then, her calls to Jihan went straight to voicemail. His apartment had been emptied. It was as if he'd erased himself from her life completely. As if the 8 months they had shared had never existed at all. The jade necklace he had given her became a painful reminder of promises that had proven as fragile as sugar glass. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that Jihan had been sent to Japan on urgent business. A rival organization threatening their interests in Osaka, requiring his personal attention. By the time he returned 2 weeks later, Haun had vanished. Her grandmother claimed she'd gone to study pastry in France, seizing an opportunity too good to pass up. The apartment where they'd built their private world was empty, with only the faintest trace of her perfume lingering in the closet. No note, no explanation, just gone. And Sungmin, playing the concerned cousin, showed Jihan surveillance photos of Haun boarding a plane, telling him she'd left a message. Don't try to find me. We both know this was never going to work. Jihan believed his cousin because why wouldn't he? Family was everything in their world. Betrayal might come from outside, but never from blood. So he buried himself in work, in violence, in expansion of territory. Trying to fill the void she'd left with power and fear. Working until exhaustion claimed him each night, so he wouldn't have to face the empty space beside him in bed. Taking more risks, becoming more ruthless. His reputation growing darker with each passing month. Meanwhile, Haun moved to her grandmother's sister's home in Busan. Told no one about the marriage, the baby, any of it. Let them believe she'd had a brief affair with a businessman who wanted nothing to do with the child. For 6 months, she hid there, watching her body change, feeling the first kicks, whispering apologies to her unborn child for the father they would never know, for the complicated legacy they would inherit. Your father was a good man in his way, she would tell her growing belly at night. He just belonged to a world that couldn't include us, a world too dangerous for a child. But 2 months ago, her great-aunt died. With nowhere else to go, Haun returned to Seoul, to her grandmother's bakery. The old woman was overjoyed to have her back. Asked no questions about the pregnancy beyond practical concerns about the delivery date. They fell back into their rhythm of early mornings and flower-dusted afternoons. The bakery was now in Jihan's territory, but Haun never saw him, never expected to see him, believed he was married to someone else, building a different family, living the life that had been planned for him all along. Until this morning, when fate crashed through the bakery door wearing an expensive black suit and eyes that still haunted her dreams. This brings us back to that frozen moment. Jihan's hand on her wrist, the shattered pastries on the floor, 8 months of separation suspended between their bodies like a held breath. The air between them charged with unanswered questions, with pain, with longing neither wanted to acknowledge. Jihan turned to the customers, to his men by the door. One gesture from him cleared the entire bakery. The last customer practically ran for the exit, the bell chiming a final warning as the door closed behind them. Such was his power, one movement and a room emptied. One word and people obeyed. His eyes never left her. 8 months, he said, voice low and dangerous. 8 months I've been looking for you. Haun stared at him in confusion. What are you talking about? You're the one who ended things. She tried to pull her wrist from his grip, but he held firm. Not hurting her, just ensuring she couldn't run. Not again. I never ended anything. His grip on her wrist tightened slightly, not enough to hurt, just enough to emphasize his words, just enough to convey his desperation. I never signed any divorce papers. I never wanted you gone. The world tilted beneath her feet. Confusion clouded her eyes. But your cousin showed me the documents. Your signature was right there. I saw it with my own eyes. Jihan went completely still. The kind of stillness that precedes violence. The kind of stillness that would make anyone who knew him take several steps back. My cousin, Sungmin, he came to the bakery, showed me pictures of you with her, said the engagement was being announced, that I was an embarrassment you needed to erase. Understanding dawned across his face, followed by a fury so cold it seemed to lower the temperature in the room. His jaw clenched, a muscle twitching at his temple. There was no engagement, no other woman. I was sent to Japan for 2 weeks on family business. When I returned, you were gone. Sungmin told me you'd left the country, that you couldn't handle the lifestyle, the secrecy. Haun's free hand moved to her belly as the baby kicked violently, as if sensing the tension in the room, as if reacting to the sound of its father's voice. He said your family would destroy my grandmother's bakery if they found out about us, that you were trying to protect me by ending it cleanly. Jihan released her wrist only to place his palm gently against her cheek, the tenderness of the gesture at odds with the fury in his eyes. And you believed I would discard you so easily? That I would end our marriage with papers delivered by someone else? That I wouldn't at least have the courage to face you? What was I supposed to think? 8 months of pain flooded her voice, cracking it at the edges. 8 months of believing herself abandoned. 8 months of preparing to raise a child alone. You never came looking. Your number was disconnected. The apartment was emptied. Everything we built together was gone in an instant. Because I thought you'd left me. For the first time, his control cracked. The mask of the cold, calculated crime boss slipping to reveal the wounded man beneath. I tore this city apart searching for you. I had men in France looking for months. I threatened every airline for passenger information. I thought you'd grown tired of hiding, of playing second place to my family obligations. I thought, his voice broke. I thought you'd realized you deserved better than me. They stared at each other, the truth finally emerging from beneath layers of carefully constructed lies. Each of them victims of the same betrayal. Each of them wounded by the same hand. This is my child? He asked, his eyes dropping to her belly. The question a whisper, filled with wonder and terror in equal measure. Yes, she didn't elaborate, didn't need to. The timing made it impossible to be anyone else's. One word, one syllable, but it changed everything. A strange sound escaped him, something between a laugh and a sob. I'm going to kill him, not a threat, a simple statement of fact, as matter of fact as commenting on the weather. My own blood, my own cousin. He took you from me. He took my child from me. 8 months of our lives, gone because of him. Haun opened her mouth to respond, but a sharp pain cut through her abdomen. She gasped, doubling over, her face contorted in sudden agony. Ji-hun caught her before she could fall, alarm replacing fury in an instant. "What is it? What's wrong?" "The baby," she managed through clenched teeth. "Something's not right. This isn't normal." The pain was different from the practice contractions she'd been experiencing over the past few weeks. Sharper. Wrong. Her doctor had warned her about stress triggers, about the risks with her blood pressure already running high during this pregnancy. Had cautioned her to avoid exactly this kind of emotional upheaval. Ji-hun didn't hesitate. He swept her into his arms as if she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest. His movements deliberate, careful not to jostle her. "My car is outside. We're going to the hospital." The command in his voice was back, but now directed at solving this new crisis. "My grandmother," she started, even through the pain thinking of the old woman who would return to find the bakery empty. "I'll send someone to explain." His tone brooked no argument. The safety of his child, his children, both Haun and the baby, now his only priority. He carried her through the bakery, past the startled faces of employees arriving for their shifts, out to where his black Mercedes waited at the curb. His driver jumped out, opening the back door without being told. The man's eyes widened slightly at the sight of his boss carrying a heavily pregnant woman, but he asked no questions. In Ji-hun's world, questions were dangerous things. Ji-hun slid in beside her, pulling her against him as another contraction hit. "Seoul University Hospital," he ordered. "Call Dr. Park. Tell her it's an emergency." His voice was calm but carried an undercurrent of panic he couldn't quite conceal. As the car pulled away from the curb, weaving through morning traffic with the skill of a driver used to urgent situations, Haun clutched at his sleeve. "How do you know Dr. Park?" "Because I've had her on retainer for 8 months, he said quietly. "In case I found you." The admission hung between them, evidence that he had never given up, never stopped preparing for her return, that some part of him had always believed they would find their way back to each other. Another contraction hit, stronger than the first. She cried out, her nails digging into his arm. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the car's cool air conditioning. Ji-hun pulled out his phone, his face a mask of controlled fury. The business that had to be handled even in this moment of crisis. "I need to make some calls while we drive." His voice had changed, become something harder. The voice of the man Seoul's criminals feared. He dialed, and when the line connected, his voice changed. Became something inhuman, something carved from ice and rage. "Find Sungmin. Now." A pause as the person on the other end responded. "I don't care where he is or what he's doing. Bring him to the warehouse. Alive." Another pause, longer this time. "No, you don't need to know why. Just do it." Haun could hear the confusion on the other end of the line. Sungmin was family, protected, untouchable until now. "He forged my signature. He lied to my wife. He hid my unborn child from me for 8 months. Ji-hun's eyes met Haun's as he delivered the final blow. "I want him to understand exactly what he's taken from me before I take everything from him." The finality in his voice should have terrified her. The implication of what would happen to Sungmin should have horrified her. Instead, she felt a dark satisfaction. The primal instinct of a mother whose family had been threatened. Of a woman whose love had been manipulated. He made more calls as the car sped through Seoul's crowded streets, each one more devastating than the last. In the space of 5 minutes, he systematically dismantled his cousin's entire life. Froze his assets with a single command to their family banker. Revoked his protection through a terse conversation with their security chief. Ordered his immediate removal from all family businesses in a call to their lawyer that left no room for questions. His apartment, his cars, his investments, everything in his name but bought with family money is to be seized. Immediately, his security clearances revoked. His accounts emptied. A pause. "Because I said so. That's the only reason you need." Between contractions, Haun listened in horrified fascination. This was the side of Ji-hun she'd rarely seen during their brief marriage. The Mafia boss. The man whose word could destroy lives with a single command. The man who had built his reputation on being ruthlessly efficient when crossed. Yet his free hand never stopped stroking her hair, her face, her belly. Gentle touches at complete odds with the violence in his voice. As if he could simultaneously be two people, the tender husband and the merciless crime lord. Almost there, he murmured to her between calls. Just hold on. Both of you, hold on for me. The hospital staff were waiting when they arrived, alerted by the calls from Ji-hun's driver, Dr. Park herself, a severe woman in her 50s with kind eyes that had seen everything, directing Ha-eun immediately to a private room. The hospital's best room, reserved for VIPs. Reserved, apparently, for whenever Ji-hun Park came calling. Blood pressure dangerously high, she said after a quick examination. Early labor signs. We need to stabilize her immediately. Ji-hun never left her side. Not when they hooked her up to monitors. Not when the nurses tried to suggest he wait outside. His presence filled the room, dangerous but contained, like a storm held back by sheer willpower. Like a dam about to break but holding together through sheer determination. If anything happens to her, he said to Dr. Park, voice low enough that only the doctor could hear, your career won't be the only thing that ends today. The doctor met his gaze without flinching. Years of dealing with Seoul's elite, both legitimate and criminal, had stripped her of fear. Mr. Park, I've been delivering babies for 30 years. You can threaten me after I've saved your wife and child. Until then, sit down and stay out of my way. Surprisingly, he complied, took a seat beside Ha-eun's bed, held her hand as if it were the most precious thing in the world. For the next 4 hours, they fought to stop the labor. Medication to lower her blood pressure, fluids for dehydration, monitors beeping steady confirmation that the baby's heartbeat remained strong despite the stress. Each minute feeling like an eternity as they waited to see if the contractions would subside, if the danger would pass. Ji-hun sat beside the bed, holding Ha-eun's hand, his thumb rubbing circles on her palm. Neither spoke. What was there to say after 8 months of separation built on lies? After discovering they'd both been victims of the same betrayal? The silence between them was filled with the beeping of monitors, with the hushed voices of medical staff, with the weight of all they had lost. Finally, Dr. Park returned with good news. The contractions have stopped. The baby's vitals are strong. But, she fixed Ha-eun with a stern look, complete bed rest from now until delivery. No stress, no work, nothing that could trigger early labor again. She turned to Ji-hun. And you, whatever business caused this level of stress needs to wait. Your priority is keeping them both calm and healthy for the next 4 weeks. Ji-hun nodded, somber. She'll have everything she needs. After the doctor left, silence fell between them again. Ha-eun stared at the ceiling, afraid to look at him, afraid of what she might see in his eyes. 8 months was a long time. People changed. Feelings changed. Perhaps the shock of finding her, of discovering the pregnancy, had momentarily rekindled something that would fade in the harsh light of reality. I never stopped loving you, he said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. Not for one day. A tear slipped down her cheek. I thought you'd moved on, built another life. There is no life without you. Simple, direct, absolute. The way he approached everything. When you disappeared, I existed. I functioned. I expanded territory and made money and put fear into the right people. But I didn't live. I haven't been living since the day you walked out that door. He reached out to touch her belly, hesitant for the first time since she'd known him, as if afraid he might be rejected, might be denied this connection. She took his hand and placed it where the baby was kicking, creating a bridge between past and future. His eyes widened at the sensation of their child moving beneath his palm. That's your child, she whispered, saying hello to their father. Something broke in his expression. The fearsome Mafia boss crumbled, revealing the man beneath, the one only she had ever truly seen. He pressed his forehead to their joined hands on her belly, his shoulders shaking with emotion he would never have allowed anyone else to witness. I swear to you both, he said, voice thick with emotion. Nothing will ever separate us again. No one will ever threaten what's mine. My family. My world. They were transferred to a private suite at the top floor of the hospital, one that looked more like a luxury hotel than a medical facility. Floor-to-ceiling windows with views of Seoul's skyline. A separate sitting area for visitors. Technology that would be at home in a billionaire's penthouse rather than a hospital room. Ji-hun made calls, arranged for Ha-eun's belongings to be collected from her grandmother's apartment, even had the old woman brought to the hospital to see her granddaughter. His efficiency was breathtaking, his resources seemingly limitless. To Ha-eun's surprise, Min-ji took one look at Ji-hun standing protectively beside the bed and nodded in approval. The old woman had survived war, poverty, and the loss of her only child. She recognized strength when she saw it. Recognized, too, the look of a man who would die before letting harm come to those he loved. "So you're the one," she said. I wondered who had put that sadness in her eyes. Ji-hun bowed deeply to the old woman, a gesture of respect rarely seen from a man of his position. "I promise you, it will never happen again." Min-ji studied him for a long moment, her gaze unnerving in its directness. "You'll protect them? Even from your own family? Especially from my own family?" The vow was ironclad, unbreakable. The old woman nodded again. "Good. The bakery needs strong hands. I'm too old to run it much longer." It was as close to a blessing as they would get. As close to acceptance as a traditional Korean grandmother could offer to the dangerous man who had claimed her granddaughter. 3 days later, Ha-eun was released from the hospital with strict instructions to remain on bed rest. Ji-hun took her not to his penthouse, too many eyes watching there, but to a house in the mountains outside Seoul. Traditional architecture with modern security. Guards posted discreetly among the trees. Private medical team on call. The perfect sanctuary, hidden from both their worlds. "We'll stay here until the baby comes," he told her, carrying her across the threshold despite her protests. "Then we decide our next move together." The emphasis on together was deliberate. A promise that no decisions would be made without her input. That they were partners in whatever came next. For the first time in 8 months, Ha-eun slept through the night. No anxiety dreams. No phantom kicks from the baby. Just peace, wrapped in Ji-hun's arms, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. The safety she had longed for finally found, ironically, in the arms of Seoul's most dangerous man. He never mentioned Sungmin. Never spoke of what happened after his men found his cousin. Some secrets were better kept, even from her. But she saw the satisfaction in his eyes when he returned one evening after being gone for several hours. Saw how he washed his hands longer than usual before touching her. Saw the dark stain beneath his fingernails that might have been blood, might have been dirt, might have been justice. Justice had been served in the shadows, as was the way of his world. She didn't ask. Some questions were dangerous even between husband and wife. Some answers were better left unspoken. The baby came 2 weeks early. Not dangerously so, just eager to meet the world. A girl, with Ji-hun's intense eyes and Ha-eun's delicate features. They named her Sua, meaning beautiful elegance. A name that bridged both their worlds. A name that carried both strength and grace. But the real surprise came 12 minutes later when a second baby emerged. A boy, smaller than his sister but with a fierce grip and lungs that announced his arrival to the entire mountain. A second child that had hidden behind his sister during every ultrasound, every examination. A secret even medical science hadn't detected. "Twins," Dr. Park said, smiling at their shocked expressions. The boy must have been hiding behind his sister during the ultrasounds. It happens sometimes. They named him Junho, ruler of the world. A name befitting the son of Seoul's most powerful man. A name that carried the weight of legacy, of expectation, of the empire he would one day inherit. Ji-hun held both babies with trembling hands. This dangerous man who had ordered deaths without blinking, now afraid he might bruise such tiny, perfect creatures. This man who had built his reputation on ruthless efficiency, now undone by 7 pounds of new life. "They're so small," he whispered, all replacing the confidence that usually marked his voice. "But strong," Ha-eun assured him. "Like their father." In the weeks that followed, decisions were made. They would not return to the shadows. No more hiding. No more secrets. Ji-hun formally introduced Ha-eun as his wife at a family gathering. The twins in her arms making it clear this was not a negotiation but a statement of fact. This was his family. his future. Anyone who challenged that would face consequences that would make what happened to Sungmin look merciful. His father, old and traditional but not stupid, recognized the steel in his son's eyes and gave his blessing. Recognized, perhaps, that his son had found something worth fighting for beyond territory and respect. Had found something worth protecting that would make him even more formidable. The bakery was expanded, renovated, transformed into the flagship of a chain that would spread across Seoul. Min-ji would oversee it all, with Ji-hun's resources behind her. A legitimate business to balance the illegitimate empire. A place where flour and finance could coexist. Where Haun's talents could flourish without the burden of financial struggle. 1 month after the twins' birth, they held a traditional Korean Baek-il celebration. 100 days of life, the dangerous early period survived. The ceremony that acknowledged the children had safely passed through their most vulnerable time. Family gathered, her grandmother, his father, carefully selected members of his organization. The babies were displayed in traditional hanbok, red thread tied around their wrists to ward off evil spirits. Ji-hun's father held his grandchildren with tears in his eyes. The hard man who had built an empire on blood and fear now reduced to cooing nonsense at infants who grabbed at his expensive tie. They have the park strength, he declared. Both of them. Later that night, after everyone had gone and the twins slept peacefully in their cribs, Ji-hun took Haun's hands in his. Led her to the balcony overlooking the mountains, the city a distant glow beyond. We should have a proper wedding, he said. Not hidden, not secret. A celebration worthy of what we've built. We're already married, she reminded him, touching the jade necklace she once again wore around her neck. Yes, but I want the world to know you chose me, that I chose you, above family obligation, above tradition, above everything. I want a ceremony that honors what we've survived together. 3 months later, under cherry blossoms in full bloom, they renewed their vows. She wore traditional hanbok in crimson and gold, embroidered with symbols of prosperity and longevity. He wore the formal dress of his position, dark and commanding but with the jade cufflinks she had given him, a matching set to her necklace. The twins watched from their grandmother's arms, too young to understand but somehow sensing the importance of the moment. When it came time for vows, Ji-hun spoke with rare public emotion. 8 months ago, I lost you to lies and deception. I lived in a world without color, without taste, without purpose beyond finding you again. I moved through days like a ghost, existing but not living. Today I promise that nothing will ever separate us again. You and our children are my world, my purpose, my reason for every breath. I choose you in this life and all lives to come. Haun's response came from a heart finally healed of its deepest wounds. 8 months ago, I believed I wasn't enough for you, that your world was too big, too dangerous for someone like me. I carried our children alone, speaking to them of a father they would never know but would have loved them completely. I built walls around my heart to protect what was left after you were gone. Today I know the truth, that love doesn't see boundaries of world or class or family. It simply is, unchangeable, unbreakable. I choose you, Ji-hun Park, the man behind the name that makes others tremble. The man who held our babies with hands that could crush worlds but touched them only with tenderness. I choose you in this life and all lives to come. That night, they stood on the balcony of their mountain home. The twins sleeping safely inside, guarded by men who would die before letting harm come to the park heirs. Seoul's lights distant but visible, a constellation of human making spread beneath the actual stars. Regrets? He asked, arm around her waist, pulling her close against the evening chill. Not one, she answered, leaning into his strength. You, only the 8 months we lost. The early movements of our children I'll never feel. The moments of your body changing that I should have witnessed. We have a lifetime of moments ahead, she reminded him. A lifetime of watching them grow. He pulled her closer, his lips finding her temple. A lifetime isn't nearly enough. If this story of betrayal, second chances, and unexpected blessings touched your heart, drop a comment below and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Tell me where you're watching from. Seoul? New York? London? I want to know where this story has reached. Tell me what you would do if faced with such a choice. Believe the evidence before you or trust in love? Would you forgive someone who came back after 8 months, even with the best explanation? Share this with someone who believes true love finds its way back, no matter how many lies try to stand in its path. Because sometimes the longest separations lead to the most beautiful reunions. Sometimes what's meant to be finds a way, even through the darkest circumstances. And remember, love doesn't ask for permission from family tradition or social expectation. It simply exists, waiting for us to be brave enough to choose it. Again and again and again. In a world where nothing is certain, love might be the only thing worth fighting for, even if that fight takes you through hell before bringing you home.